study to be confirmational for me that God cares about all instances of injustice, and that includes racial issues. I love the section in John chapter 4 that Dr. Evans references in this study, where Jesus interacts with the woman at the well, and she is a Samaritan, and he very purposefully breaks down that racial barrier. I believe he's inviting us to do the same, and that requires us to listen, to learn, to meet other people where they're at, and it requires us to do all of these things with great intentionality.
So growing up in the 70s and 80s in central Minnesota, I really didn't have much experience with anyone outside my culture or race. And because of that, as an adult, I often felt that if it didn't affect me, it wasn't my problem. I would say things like, I don't see color, or we're all the same. And God really challenged me to step out of my box and see race and culture from a biblical view, to see the difference of God's view of oneness versus man's view of sameness. We learn in Acts 13 that the early leaders of the Antioch church were of Middle Eastern and African descent. While celebrating their culture, they didn't let it override the gospel. And it's the gospel that brings us together and makes us one.
One of my favorite things about this small group was the account from Numbers 12. In that chapter, Moses is married to a black Cushite woman, and his brother and sister Miriam and Aaron do not accept that because they're still living under the sin of racism. God's punishment was put upon them for that, and in addition to being an example and educating his brother and sister, Moses also prayed fervently for their forgiveness. They repented, God forgave them. We all have the opportunity to be Moses. We can all be examples to one another, we can educate one another, and most importantly, we can pray for one another. And that's how we can help to bring us closer to racial reconciliation.
One of the memorable weeks for me was when we looked at some of the false teachings that have existed in the church. One of these teachings was known as the curse of Ham. Essentially, people in the church took Genesis 9:25, misinterpreted it on many levels, and created a false teaching that said anybody born with black skin is born under God's curse. And as we talked about this false teaching, what really broke my heart was the fact that there are people alive today in the older generations, and even some in my generation, who have been on the receiving end of this false teaching in ways that are racist and discriminatory. And so it motivated me. It motivated me to be ready and willing to debunk this false teaching of the curse of Ham and its ripple effects, and to represent God's heart accurately, a heart of God for racial unity and reconciliation. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this small group, and I look forward to this effort and conversation continuing right here in our church.